She thought she had escaped the fire. But when her past returned with guns at her door, Helena Graves discovered the deadliest secret of all. Sometimes survival means becoming the storm. Helena Graves stood at the window of her modest apartment, the city lights stretching like constellations across the horizon. She pressed her fingertips lightly against the glass, leaving faint smudges, but her mind wasn't on the skyline. It was on the silence behind her. Her 31st birthday had arrived with little fanfare, no balloons, no laughter, not even a phone call from her family. The Graves' name carried weight in their small town. Wealth, reputation, endless whispers. But somehow Helena had been the one cut adrift, forgotten in the shadows of their ambitions. She closed her eyes and inhaled deeply, studying her emotions. As a teacher at the local academy, she had built a quiet life for herself, one of order and restraint. Her students adored her patience, admired her intellect, and clung to her encouragement. Yet when she returned home each evening, there was no one waiting. The walls carried only her footsteps, and the silence reminded her of what had been taken from her years ago. Helena had long suspected that her family's rejection wasn't simply neglect. There was a calculated edge to it, a coldness sharpened by secrets left unspoken. The way her mother's gaze had shifted when Helena asked about the family estate. The way her father's voice hardened whenever she mentioned her late grandmother, the only person who had ever believed in her. That night, as she sat at her small oak desk grading essays, the uneasy hum in her chest grew louder. She couldn't explain why, but something felt near, something dark, like a storm crouched on the horizon. The knock at her door startled her. She froze, pen midair, eyes darting to the entrance. No one visited her unannounced. Carefully, she set her papers aside and rose, every step toward the door echoing like a drumbeat. When she opened it, the sight before her unraveled the quiet order she'd built. A tall stranger stood in the dim hallway, rain dripping from his coat. His expression was guarded, almost too calm, but his eyes burned with urgency. He extended a sealed envelope toward her. "Helena Graves?" he asked, voice low but firm. "Yes," she whispered. "This is for you. It's important. Don't ignore it." Before she could respond, he pressed the envelope into her hand and turned, vanishing down the stairs as if chased by ghosts. Helena shut the door, heart hammering. The envelope felt heavy, like it carried more than paper, more than words. With trembling hands, she broke the seal. Inside was a single letter, her grandmother's handwriting, dated only days before her mysterious death. And, at the bottom, a warning. The truth is buried where the family would never dare to look. Trust no one, not even those who share your blood. Helena's knees weakened, the words burning into her. Her grandmother had been gone for nearly a decade. How could this letter be new? Who delivered it? And, white night, on her birthday. The silence in the apartment no longer felt empty. It felt watched. And Helena knew her life was no longer her own. Helena's hands shook as she set the letter on her desk. She read it again, tracing each word with her fingertips as though repetition might unlock some hidden truth. Her grandmother, Eleanor Graves, had been the only anchor in a family consumed by wealth and appearances. Eleanor had died suddenly 10 years ago, leaving Helena with nothing but memories of her kindness and warnings whispered in the dark. But this was different. The letter was dated only a week ago, written in the graceful, looping script she remembered so well. It was impossible, yet here it was undeniable. Her phone buzzed. She snatched it up, half expecting another message, perhaps some clue. But the screen only displayed a name she hadn't seen in months, Marcus Hale. Her chest tightened. Marcus had been many things, her colleague once, her closest friend, and almost something more. But when rumors swirled and Helena became the quiet scapegoat for a scandal at the academy, Marcus had pulled away. His absence had cut deeper than her family's neglect. She hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen. Then, with a steadying breath, she answered. "Helena?" His voice carried an edge, urgent but familiar. Are you safe?" Her brow furrowed. "Safe? Marcus, what are you talking about?" There was a pause, then a strained exhale. Listen, I don't have time to explain everything. Just don't trust anyone tonight. Lock your doors. Stay inside. The line went dead. Helena's pulse pounded in her ears. She stared at the phone, her reflection ghost-like in the black screen. Marcus had always been steady, composed. To hear fear in his voice unsettled her more than the letter. A knock rattled the door again. She froze, eyes darting toward it. Another visitor? Her instincts screamed to stay silent, but something stronger pulled her forward. When she opened the door, it wasn't the stranger in the raincoat. This time it was a woman, tall, sharp-featured, and impeccably dressed, like she'd walked straight out of the Graves family estate. "Helena," the woman said, her tone laced with false warmth. "It's been far too long." Helena's stomach dropped. "Aunt Rosalind." Her aunt's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I heard it's your birthday. Thought I'd stop by." She held out a small, ornate box wrapped in velvet ribbon. A gift from the family. The word family dripped with venom. Helena hadn't received so much as a Christmas card from them in years. She accepted the box with hesitation. It was surprisingly heavy. "Why now?" Rosalind tilted her head, her gaze sharp. "Because, dear girl, some truths can't stay hidden forever. And it's time you understood what's at stake." Before Helena could question her, Rosalind leaned closer, her perfume overwhelming, and whispered, "But be careful who you trust. Even Marcus has his own agenda." With that, she kissed Helena's cheek, the gesture icy and deliberate, then turned and left without another word. Helena shut the door quickly, her hands trembling against the box. She stared at it, her mind spinning. The letter. Marcus's warning. Rosalind's sudden visit. She felt caught in a web spun long before she even understood its threads. Finally, with a deep breath, she untied the ribbon and opened the box. Inside lay a single object, an old brass key, tarnished with age, and a note written in Rosalind's hand. "The door beneath the estate remembers everything. When you're ready, it will open." Helena clutched the key, her heart racing. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. "Trust no one, not even those who share your blood." The silence of the apartment pressed in on her once more, heavy and suffocating. But now she knew this wasn't silence. This was waiting. And the storm she had sensed was already here. Helena sat at her desk long after Aunt Rosalind's departure, the velvet box still open beside her. The brass key gleamed faintly under the lamp, as though daring her to touch it again. She traced its ridges with her fingertip, every part of her screaming that the object was more than just metal. It was a summons, a tether pulling her back to the place she had fought to leave behind. The Graves estate. Even the name tasted bitter on her tongue. It was where she had grown up under the suffocating gaze of her parents, where every misstep was a shame, and every ambition of hers was deemed trivial. It was also the last place she had seen her grandmother alive. Eleanor's smile, warm and unwavering, had been a flame against the estate's cold halls. Losing her had felt like losing the last fragment of home. Now, with this letter and this key, the estate was calling her back. But not tonight. Not yet. Her phone buzzed again, shattering the quiet. Another message from Marcus. "Don't do anything reckless. If you have something, keep it hidden until I can explain." Her breath caught. If you have something. He knew. Or at least suspected. Before she could reply, a sound pricked her ears. A faint creak outside the apartment door. She stilled, her pulse thundering. The old floorboards in the hallway groaned under weight, slow and deliberate. Helena's instincts screamed danger. She snatched the key and the letter, shoving them into the hidden drawer beneath her desk. With careful steps, she crossed the room and extinguished the lamp, plunging the apartment into darkness. Another creak. This time closer. Her hand hovered near her phone, ready to call for help, but hesitation froze her. If Marcus was right, if she truly couldn't trust anyone, then who would come to her aid? The doorknob rattled. Helena's throat tightened. Shadows stretched across her walls as she moved silently toward the kitchen. She grabbed the heaviest thing within reach, a cast-iron skillet, and clutched it like a shield. The rattling stopped. Silence again. She waited, each second an eternity, until finally the footsteps retreated down the hall. The quiet that followed was worse than the noise. It carried questions, unspoken threats. Whoever had come wasn't a stranger lost in the building. They had been trying to get in. And they would be back. Helena remained frozen until her phone chimed once more. A new message, but not from Marcus this time. The number was unknown. The message was short, chilling. "We know what you've been given. Hand it over before it's too late." Her grip on the skillet tightened. They knew. Someone else, maybe her family, was watching her every move. For the first time in years, Helena felt the walls of her independence close in. The quiet life she had carved for herself was gone. In its place was a hunt, a game where she didn't know the rules or the players. But she did know one thing. She wasn't going to let them win. Helena Graves had been ignored, cast aside, forgotten. That had left her underestimated. Now, with the letter, the key, and the memory of her grandmother guiding her, she would find the truth. Even if it destroyed the Graves family. Even if it destroyed her. Sleep was impossible. Helena lay awake for hours, her eyes tracing the ceiling cracks while her mind circled the letter, the key, and the chilling message on her phone. By dawn, exhaustion pressed on her body, but her resolve had sharpened. Waiting for answers to come to her was no longer an option. She packed a small satchel, just enough clothes for a night, her phone, and the key tucked safely inside a worn leather notebook. Every motion carried weight, as though she were crossing a line she couldn't return from. The taxi ride out of the city was quiet. The driver hummed faintly along with the radio, unaware of the storm brewing in the back seat. Helena kept her gaze fixed on the passing fields, each mile dragging her closer to the place she had sworn she'd never revisit. When the estate came into view, her breath caught. The Graves Manor sat on the crest of a hill, its gray stone walls weathered, yet unyielding, its tall windows like watchful eyes. Time hadn't softened its grandeur. If anything, neglect had given it a colder edge. Ivy crept along its surface, as though nature itself tried to reclaim what the family had locked away. Helena paid the driver and stood at the rusting gates, the air heavy with memories. She half expected someone to appear on the balcony, her father's stern silhouette glaring down, or her mother's disapproving eyes tracking her every move. Instead, silence reigned, broken only by the caw of distant crows. With trembling fingers, she pushed the gate. It groaned in protest but yielded. The gravel crunching beneath her boots echoed far too loudly in the stillness. Inside, the manor was exactly as she remembered. Grand chandeliers coated in dust, portraits of unsmiling ancestors, and corridors that smelled of cold stone and secrets. Her footsteps stirred motes of dust that danced in the thin shafts of light breaking through heavy curtains. She should have felt like an intruder, yet strangely, a part of her felt claimed. This was her blood, her legacy, no matter how fiercely she had tried to sever the tie. Helena made her way toward the East Wing, where her grandmother's study once stood. As a child, she'd spent countless hours there, curled up in a velvet chair while Eleanor read stories about courage, betrayal, and truth. But the study door was locked. Helena's hand tightened around the brass key in her satchel. She pulled it out, the metal cold against her palm, and slid it into the keyhole. It turned with a reluctant click, as though the door itself resisted, but finally surrendered. The room smelled faintly of lavender, Eleanor's favorite scent, though it had been years. Dust blanketed the furniture, yet the shelves remained intact, filled with leather-bound journals and books. Helena crossed to the desk, her heart hammering. There, lying in plain sight, was another envelope. Her name was written across it in her grandmother's handwriting. Her fingers trembled as she broke the seal. If you are reading this, Helena, it means the family has begun to unravel. The truth lies not in what they protect, but in what they fear. Beneath this estate is a chamber they will never speak of. You must go there, but beware, those closest to you will not hesitate to betray you. Blood is not loyalty. Blood is a chain. Choose wisely who you trust. The letter slipped from Helena's hand, her knees threatening to give way. A hidden chamber. Betrayal. A chain of blood. The sound of footsteps in the hallway jolted her upright. Not light, hesitant steps. These were firm, purposeful. Someone else was in the manor. Helena stuffed the letter into her satchel and backed into the shadows of the study. The door creaked open, and a silhouette filled the doorway. She held her breath, gripping the edge of the desk for balance. When the figure stepped into the light, Helena's heart stopped. It was Marcus. His eyes scanned the room, his expression unreadable, until finally they settled on her. Relief flickered in his features, but only for a moment. "What are you doing here?" Helena whispered, her voice low and trembling. He closed the door behind him. "I could ask you the same thing. You shouldn't have come alone." Something in his tone unsettled her. Not protective, not concerned, but laced with something else. Something he wasn't saying. And in that moment, Helena wasn't sure whether to be relieved by his presence or terrified. Marcus stepped further into the study, the dust crunching faintly beneath his boots. His presence filled the room, bringing with it a strange blend of familiarity and threat. He hadn't changed much, broad-shouldered, dark hair slightly disheveled, eyes that once softened whenever they met hers. But tonight, his gaze held something harder, something that unsettled her. "I told you to stay away," he said quietly, his voice echoing off the old bookshelves. "You shouldn't have come here." Helena's fingers clenched around the edge of the desk, steadying herself. "You knew, didn't you? About the letters. About the key." He glanced at the satchel slung across her shoulder, and she noticed the way his jaw tightened. "You shouldn't carry those with you. If anyone else finds out." "Anyone else?" she interrupted, her tone sharp. "Like who, Marcus? My Aunt Rosalind? My parents, who pretended I didn't exist? Or is it you I should be afraid of?" His eyes narrowed, but he didn't answer right away. The silence between them stretched, heavy with old wounds and unspoken words. "Helena," he finally said, softer now, almost pleading. "I've been trying to keep you safe, but you have to trust me. There are things about your family you don't understand, things that could get you killed." Her chest tightened. Once, years ago, she would have believed him without hesitation. She remembered the nights they'd stayed late at the academy, sharing coffee and laughter until dawn. She remembered the almost kiss that never happened, broken apart by fear and circumstance. She remembered how it felt when he walked away, leaving her to face whispers and accusations alone. Now, standing in her grandmother's study with shadows pressing against the walls, trust felt like the most dangerous thing she could offer. "Why are you here, Marcus?" she asked, her voice low. "Don't tell me it's a coincidence." He took a step closer, his expression unreadable. "Because if you have that key, then you're already in more danger than you know. And I won't let them take you." Her pulse raced. His words rang with sincerity, but the guarded way he spoke twisted them with doubt. Who exactly was them? And what did he stand to lose or gain by being here? Before she could press further, a sharp noise echoed down the corridor. The unmistakable sound of glass shattering. Marcus's head snapped toward the door, his muscles tense. "We're not alone," he whispered. Helena's blood ran cold. She reached instinctively for her satchel, clutching it close. Marcus moved toward her, lowering his voice to a near growl. "You have to decide, Helena. Right now. Do you trust me?" The footsteps drew closer, measured, deliberate, the sound of someone who belonged in this house of secrets. Helena's heart thundered as she stared at Marcus, torn between memory and fear, between the warmth he once gave her and the shadow he now carried. The study door rattled, and the handle turned slowly. Helena knew her choice couldn't wait. The doorknob twisted, and Helena's breath caught. Marcus moved instinctively, putting himself between her and the door, his shoulders squared, his hand slipping inside his coat as though reaching for something. A weapon? Helena couldn't tell, and that uncertainty clawed at her chest. The door creaked open, and a figure slipped inside, tall, lean, dressed in black, with a hood shadowing their face. They moved with practiced silence, like someone who had done this before. Their eyes glinted as they scanned the room, settling on Helena instantly. "She has it," the intruder said, voice cold, directed not at Marcus, but at the unseen hallway behind them. Two more figures appeared, stepping into the study. Helena's pulse spiked as the room shrank, the walls pressing in. 3 intruders, all focused on her. Marcus spoke, his voice calm but sharp. "You're making a mistake. This isn't the way." The hooded figure sneered. "Step aside, Hale. You've chosen your side once already. Don't make me remind you what happens when you cross the family." The family. The words sliced through Helena like ice. Her worst suspicion confirmed. This wasn't random. Her own blood had sent them. Helena clutched the satchel tighter, her grandmother's letters and the key hidden inside. The urge to run surged in her veins, but there was nowhere to go. The only way out was through the intruders blocking the door. Marcus glanced at her, his eyes burning with urgency. "Helena, listen to me. When I say move, you run. Do you understand?" Her mind spun. Could she trust him? Or was this entire moment staged to push her into his hands? The memory of Rosalind's warning echoed. Even Marcus has his own agenda. The hooded figure stepped closer, extending a gloved hand. "Give it to us, Helena. Spare yourself the suffering. That key belongs to the Graves, not to you." Something inside Helena snapped. For years, she had been silenced, ignored, and cast aside like an unwanted burden. But not now. Not with her grandmother's words still burning in her memory. "No," she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her. "Whatever you think this key means, it's mine to discover, not yours to take." The figure's eyes narrowed, and in that instant, Marcus moved. "Now," he barked. Chaos erupted. Marcus lunged at the nearest intruder, shoving them back against the shelves, sending books crashing to the floor. Helena bolted toward the far corner, clutching the satchel. The third figure tried to block her path, but she swung the cast-iron skillet she had tucked into her bag earlier, the metal connecting with a sickening crack. The man staggered, cursing as he clutched his jaw. "Go, Helena," Marcus roared, grappling with the hooded leader. Her instincts screamed to flee, but something in her refused to leave him. She froze, torn, as the fight unfolded in front of her. The Marcus she remembered, unyielding, battling shadows from her bloodline. Then, the leader's knife flashed. Marcus caught the intruder's wrist, but the blade sliced across his arm. He hissed in pain, his grip faltering. "Run," he shouted again, blood dripping onto the dusty floor. Helena's legs finally obeyed. She darted out of the study, the corridors stretching endlessly before her. The sound of struggle echoed behind her, shouts, the crash of furniture, Marcus's groan of pain. She didn't stop until she reached the grand staircase, her chest heaving. She clutched the satchel, heart pounding against it like a second heartbeat. The estate seemed alive around her, shadows shifting, secrets whispering through its walls. And as she fled down the staircase, a single thought seared into her mind. This was only the beginning. Helena's shoes slapped against the polished wood of the grand staircase, each echo a reminder of how exposed she was. She didn't dare look back. Marcus's shouts and the clash of bodies carried faintly from above, muffled by the labyrinth of walls and corridors. She gripped the satchel like a lifeline, the strap biting into her palm. "Run for the door," instinct screamed. "Get out. Get as far away from this cursed house as possible." But another voice whispered, quieter yet stronger. The letter. Her grandmother's voice. The chamber beneath the estate. A truth long buried. Her breath caught as she reached the bottom landing. The front doors loomed ahead, tall and arched, streaked with moonlight filtering through their glass panes. Freedom was only steps away. And yet she stopped. Her grandmother's words pulsed in her mind. "The key will lead you where the Graves buried what they could not destroy." Helena hesitated, torn in two. If she fled now, she might live, but she would never know what generations of silence had tried to erase. If she stayed, she might not survive, But perhaps she'd finally uncover why her family feared her grandmother's legacy so much. Her indecision was shattered by a sound behind her. Footsteps. Heavy. Rapid. Coming down the staircase. Helena's stomach lurched. She turned instinctively, spotting the glint of steel in the shadows above. One of the intruders had broken free. Without thinking, Helena bolted, not toward the front doors, but deeper into the east wing corridor. The air grew colder, the halls narrower. The estate seemed to shift, swallowing her whole. Dusty portraits of stern-faced ancestors stared down as she passed, their gazes following her like silent judges. She darted into a side hallway and nearly stumbled over a loose floorboard. Her satchel swung forward, the key inside clinking against its brass frame. The sound jolted her, louder than it should have been, like an echo against hollow space. She froze. Slowly, she crouched and tapped the floor with her knuckles. Hollow. Her pulse quickened. A concealed passage. Shouts rang from the main corridor. They were closing in. Helena dropped to her knees, prying at the warped floorboard. Her nails splintered against the wood, desperation clawing her forward. The board gave way at last, revealing a narrow gap in the floor with a ladder descending into darkness. The smell that rose from below was earthy, damp, ancient. Helena, a voice bellowed from the hall, angry, male, too close. Heart hammering, she slung the satchel tighter across her chest and lowered herself into the gap, her foot finding the first rung of the ladder. The wood groaned under her weight. The floorboard above shifted as a shadow fell across the opening. She didn't look up. She climbed down into the black, swallowing her fear with each creak of the ladder. The darkness enveloped her, thick and suffocating. At the bottom, her feet touched cold stone. She stood in a passageway lined with crumbling brick, a hidden artery running beneath the estate. The air was stale, carrying the faint metallic tang of rust or blood. Helena pressed her back against the wall, clutching the satchel to her chest. The intruder's footsteps moved above, searching, taunting. Then silence. Her breath trembled in the dark. And in that silence, she heard something else, a sound that wasn't her imagination. A whisper. Low. Drawn out. Like a voice carried through the stone. Helena. She froze, blood draining from her face. The voice wasn't Marcus's. And it wasn't any of the intruders. It was someone or something waiting in the dark below. The whisper lingered, curling through the damp air like smoke. Helena's throat tightened. She pressed her back harder against the cold stone, forcing herself to breathe slowly, silently. It's the house, she told herself. Old stone. Drafts, your mind playing tricks. But her gut told her otherwise. Clutching the satchel, she forced her feet to move, each step echoing softly against the narrow tunnel walls. The ceiling was low, the bricks mottled with mildew, and the air grew colder the deeper she went. The darkness pressed against her like a living thing. Her grandmother's words burned in her memory. The key will guide you. Helena slipped the small brass key from the satchel, the metal warm in her palm despite the chill. She held it up, as though the faint light from above might catch on it and reveal a direction. But it did something stranger. It vibrated, barely perceptible, almost like a pulse. Her chest tightened. Somewhere ahead, faintly, she heard water dripping. Then something else. The soft scrape of stone shifting, like a door being nudged open. She froze, listening. A flicker of movement caught her eye. At first, she thought it was a trick of the dark, but then it appeared again, a faint glow seeping through cracks in the wall farther down the passage. Heart-hammering, Helena followed it. Each step closer made the glow stronger, until she reached a rough archway carved into the brick. She slipped inside, finding herself in a small chamber. The glow came from a lantern set on an old wooden crate. Its flames sputtered weakly, but it was enough to reveal the room. Stone walls. Dusty shelves lined with jars whose contents had long since rotted. And in the center, an old trunk bound in iron, its lock shaped like the crest of the Graves family. Helena's breath caught. Her fingers tightened around the key. Her grandmother's legacy. But before she could move, The whisper came again. Louder this time. Closer. Helena. She spun, lantern light swaying wildly. The chamber was empty. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Someone's here. Watching. A creak echoed from the passage behind her. Slow, deliberate. Footsteps. Panic surged. She rushed to the trunk, fumbling with the lock. The key slid in smoothly, too smoothly, as if it had always belonged there. With a click, the lock released, and the iron bands loosened. The lid groaned as she pushed it open. Inside, beneath layers of yellowed cloth, lay stacks of old letters, brittle ledgers, and bound volumes. She snatched one up, her eyes skimming faded ink. Names. Transactions. Dates. A family ledger, filled with secrets. Land transfers, unmarked accounts, blood ties concealed. A record of betrayal spanning decades. Her grandmother hadn't lied. But then, something shifted in the shadows. The lantern flickered violently, nearly extinguishing, and a shape appeared in the doorway. Tall. Still. Silent. Not Marcus. Not one of the intruders. Helena's breath hitched as the figure stepped forward, their face hidden in shadow. "You were never meant to find this," the figure said, voice low, almost mournful. Her blood ran cold, because she knew that voice. It belonged to someone she hadn't seen in years. Someone who was supposed to be dead. The figure stepped fully into the lantern light, and Helena's knees nearly buckled. "It couldn't be." "Samuel," she whispered, the name tumbling from her lips like a ghost escaping her throat. Her brother. The boy who had drowned in the river when she was 15. The boy she had mourned, buried in her memory with a grief so raw it had never truly healed. And yet, there he stood. Older, harder, his once boyish face carved into sharp lines. His eyes, once warm, now glimmered with something darker. "You're not real," Helena whispered, clutching the satchel like a shield. "You can't be." Samuel's mouth curved into a half-smile, bitter and cold. "I told you once, didn't I? Graves' blood doesn't drown. It survives." Her pulse hammered in her ears. "They told me you were gone. I saw them lower your coffin." An empty coffin, he cut in, his voice sharp. "They needed you to believe it. Needed you weak. Isolated. That's what the Graves do. Bury truth alive." Helena staggered back, her shoulder hitting the cold stone wall. Her mind spun, torn between disbelief and the aching familiarity of his voice. "Why now? Why reveal yourself now?" Samuel's eyes flicked to the open trunk. "Because you've found what they killed to protect. And because you're in more danger than you realize." Before she could answer, a crash echoed down the passageway, the sound of pursuit. The intruders. Samuel's gaze darkened. "They're not after me. They're after you. And if you've opened that trunk, they won't stop until they bleed you dry." He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Helena, you need to leave the letters. Take only the key. There are things in those records you're not ready to see." Her stomach nodded. He sounded protective, but his words chilled her. Not ready to see? Her grandmother had trusted her with the truth, and yet here was Samuel, alive, impossible, demanding she walk away. "Why should I trust you?" she asked, her voice trembling but firm. Samuel's expression hardened, shadows carving his face. "Because, sister, the Graves buried me once already. And if you don't listen, they'll bury you alive next." The lantern flickered again, throwing his face into sharp relief. For the briefest instant, Helena thought she saw something, his eyes, reflecting the flame, too sharp, too inhuman. The footsteps drew nearer. Shouts carried through the passage. Samuel extended his hand. "Choose, Helena. Come with me now, or stay and die with your questions." Helena's heart thundered. Her grandmother's voice in memory urged her to follow the truth. Marcus's warning urged her to run. And Samuel, her dead brother, impossibly alive, offered his hand, promising salvation wrapped in shadows. Torn between blood, legacy, and survival, Helena felt the weight of choice pressing down. And in that moment, she realized, no matter what she chose tonight, she would never walk out of the Graves estate unchanged. The tunnel shook with the thunder of boots. The intruders were close now. Their shouts ricocheting through the brick walls. Lantern light quivered in Helena's trembling grip. Samuel's hand remained outstretched, steady, unwavering. Now, Helena, decide. Her chest heaved, every instinct screaming in different directions. She glanced at the trunk, at the fragile ledgers stacked like brittle bones of her family's corruption. Proof, truth, answers. Her grandmother had trusted her with this. But Samuel's words slithered into her thoughts. Leave them. Take only the key. They'll destroy you if you dig deeper. Why hide the truth? She demanded, her voice raw. If these records matter, why not expose them? Samuel's jaw tightened, his eyes shadowed with something unspeakable. Because once you open those pages, you can never close them again. You'll see what our family really did, what I became to survive. And you'll wish you hadn't. Helena's throat constricted. His voice cracked on that last word. A glimpse of the boy she once loved shimmered through, but only for a heartbeat. The intruders burst into the passageway. Their lanterns flared, revealing masked faces twisted with fury. There, one shouted, pointing straight at her. Samuel snarled, shoving Helena behind him. His hand flicked, and from his coat sleeve slid a curved blade, glinting wickedly in the light. He lunged with lethal precision, cutting down the first man with terrifying efficiency. Helena froze, horror flooding her veins. This wasn't the brother she remembered. This was something else, something sharpened, brutal, honed by years and shadows. Run! Samuel barked, his voice rough with command. But Marcus's voice rang out from behind the intruders, echoing through the chaos. Helena, don't trust him. Her heart stopped. Marcus, bloodied, limping, but alive, fought his way down the tunnel, grappling one of the intruders from behind. His eyes locked on hers, blazing with urgency. He's not your brother anymore. The world fractured in that instant. Two voices, both men tied to her past, both demanding her trust, both promised survival, but on different paths. Samuel, her dead brother made flesh, carving through enemies with savage grace, offering protection cloaked in secrets. Marcus, the man her grandmother once trusted, battered but defiant, was warning her away from blood that no longer bled the same. The tunnel walls seemed to close in. Dust rained from the ceiling. Shouts and screams filled the air. Helena clutched the satchel to her chest, her knuckles white around the brass key. She had to choose. Now. With her heart slamming against her ribs, Helena's voice cut through the chaos. But the words never finished. The lanterns shattered all at once, plunging the tunnel into suffocating darkness. A scream tore through the black. Steel clashed against steel. And Helena, blinded and choking on dust, felt a hand seize her wrist, pulling her toward an unknown fate. The darkness was absolute. Helena's world shrank to the crushing grip on her wrist, the scrape of boots on stone, and the suffocating stench of dust and oil smoke from the shattered lanterns. Let go, she gasped, twisting violently, but the hand only tightened. Quiet, a voice hissed in her ear. Low. Urgent. Familiar. Marcus. Relief struck, followed by doubt. Could she trust even him now? The tunnel exploded with chaos. Shouts and screams tangled in the dark. The clang of Samuel's blade slicing through the air. The guttural groans of injured men. Helena stumbled as Marcus pulled her down a side passage she hadn't noticed before, the satchel thumping against her hip with every lurching step. Keep moving, Marcus ordered, his voice strained, rough with pain. They plunged deeper into the dark. The sounds of battle faded, muffled by layers of stone, until only their own ragged breaths remained. At last, Marcus shoved her against the wall, his hands braced on either side of her shoulders. His face, faintly illuminated by a sliver of moonlight leaking through a crack in the bricks, was pale and streaked with blood. Helena, he rasped, you have to listen to me. That man, Samuel, whatever he told you, It isn't the whole truth. Her heart pounded, torn between memories of her lost brother and the feral killer she had just seen in the lantern's glow. But it is him. I saw his face. His voice. Marcus's eyes flashed, dark and fierce. Faces can lie. Voices can deceive. But blood doesn't lie, Helena. The Graves bloodline, it twists everything it touches. Do you understand? That's why your grandmother wanted you to have the key, not them. Helena's grip tightened on the satchel. The brass key inside seemed to pulse against her ribs, as though alive. Then tell me what the key unlocks. Tell me why my grandmother risked everything to hide it. Marcus hesitated, just long enough for her to notice. And in that pause, Helena's stomach dropped. You know, she whispered. You've known all along. Before Marcus could answer, a faint scraping echoed from the passage behind them. Not hurried footsteps this time, slow, deliberate, like someone following a trail. Helena's blood ran cold. Marcus's hand brushed the knife at his belt, his voice lowering to a warning growl. He's coming. Helena's pulse thundered. Between Marcus's half-truths and Samuel's impossible return, she no longer knew which direction meant salvation, or which meant doom. But she did know one thing. Whatever the Graves had buried beneath this estate, she was standing at the edge of a truth too dangerous to remain hidden. And the dark was not going to let her go without a fight. The scraping steps grew louder, echoing down the narrow tunnel like a blade dragged across stone. Helena pressed against the wall, clutching the satchel, her breath sharp and shallow. Marcus stood in front of her, knife in hand, his shoulders tense, every muscle coiled for what was coming. Then, Samuel emerged from the dark. His face, pale in the faint moonlight slicing through the cracks, looked almost serene. But his eyes burned with a fevered light, too intense, too inhuman. His blade glimmered wet with blood. Still playing the loyal guard, Marcus? Samuel said softly, his voice like velvet stretched over iron. I told you once, you don't protect her. You use her. Just like the rest of us. Marcus's jaw tightened. And I told you, you should have stayed buried. The tension snapped taut between them, charged like lightning in a storm. Helena's heart hammered as her gaze darted between them. Marcus, bloodied but resolute. Samuel, alive yet impossibly changed. She forced herself to speak, her voice shaking but strong. Stop this. Both of you. I don't care about your grudges. I want the truth. What is the key for? Why does everyone want it? Samuel's eyes softened on her, just for a moment, the ghost of the brother she remembered flickering through. Because it unlocks what they swore would never see light again. Proof of what the Graves did. Of what we are. Take it, Helena, and you'll damn us all. Marcus shook his head, his voice harsh. Lies. It doesn't damn her, it frees her. That's why your grandmother trusted me, with her last words. Helena's stomach twisted. Both of them, pulling her in opposite directions. Both with blood on their hands. The intruder's shouts returned, faint but drawing closer. Time was running out. Samuel extended his blood-stained hand toward her. Come with me. I'll show you the truth, but you must trust me completely. Marcus stepped forward, blocking Samuel's reach. Or come with me, and I'll keep you alive long enough to choose for yourself. Helena's chest ached, her pulse thundering in her ears. Two men, one bound by memory, one by loyalty, stood waiting for her decision, the weight of centuries pressing down. Her voice trembled as she whispered, I. The tunnel's ceiling groaned violently. Cracks split through the stone, dust raining down as the earth above them shifted. Somewhere far off, a muffled roar echoed, like part of the estate itself collapsing. The lantern flames sputtered and died, plunging them into black once more. And in that final instant before the ceiling gave way, Helena felt hands seize her, one pulling left, the other right. Then the world caved in. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. It washed the city's streets in a ceaseless downpour, the kind that blurred headlights into streaks of white fire and made the nights feel longer, more suffocating. For Helena Graves, the storm wasn't just outside, it had followed her into every corner of her life. She sat by the window of her apartment, her gaze fixed on the distorted reflection of herself in the glass. The woman staring back looked older than her 30 years, her eyes darkened with sleeplessness, her face marked by choices she wished she'd never been forced to make. The echoes of the last confrontation, the choice she had made when fire and betrayal burned around her, still pulsed in her veins. But the world hadn't ended with that choice. In many ways, it had only begun. A knock broke her thoughts. Sharp. Urgent. She froze, fingers tightening around the teacup she hadn't touched in hours. Nobody visited her now. She'd made sure of it. Another knock, louder this time. Helena rose, heart hammering, and approached the door. She hesitated, her hand hovering over the lock. Then she heard his voice. "Helena, it's me." Her breath caught. She knew that voice. It shouldn't have been here. Not after everything. Slowly, almost unwillingly, she turned the handle. The door creaked open, and there he stood, soaked from the rain, eyes shadowed, carrying the weight of secrets that had chased them both. "Gideon," she whispered, the name trembling on her lips. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, closing the door firmly behind him. The room felt smaller instantly, the air thick with unsaid words and dangerous memories. "You shouldn't be here," Helena said, retreating a step, though part of her ached at the sight of him. "I had no choice," Gideon replied, his voice low, gravelly with exhaustion. "They know, Helena. They know everything. And now they're coming for you." Her pulse quickened, the storm outside roaring louder in her ears. The life she had tried to rebuild, the fragile illusion of peace she had fought for, was shattered in an instant. She should have expected this. Choices like hers never stayed buried. "What do you mean?" she asked, though deep down, she already feared the answer. Gideon's gaze locked on hers, piercing, desperate, but still carrying that flicker of something else. Something she had once trusted. Something dangerously close to love. "It means," he said, "the war isn't over. It's only just begun." Helena's stomach nodded as Gideon's words echoed in the silence. The war isn't over. It's only just begun. For weeks, she had been trying to bury herself in anonymity, to vanish into the shadows of the city, like a ghost. Every knock on her door, every unfamiliar step behind her on the street, had kept her nerves raw. But hearing it from Gideon confirmed what she had feared all along. Her past hadn't loosened its grip. "What do they know?" she asked, her voice sharp, though her hands trembled as she crossed her arms. "Tell me exactly what you brought to my doorstep, Gideon." He moved closer, dripping water onto the hardwood, his dark coat heavy with rain. His presence filled the room, his eyes never leaving hers. "They know about the records. The flash drive. Everything you stole the night of the fire." Helena's breath caught. That flash drive, hidden in a place only she could find, was more than evidence. It was her insurance, her curse, her last weapon. And now, if Gideon was right, it was a beacon painted on her back. "You swore you'd protect me," she said bitterly, anger breaking through her fear. "But all you ever bring is chaos." His jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he'd lash back, but instead his voice softened. "I didn't come here to fight, Helena. I came here to warn you. They've sent someone. Not Draven. Someone worse." The name Draven was enough to make her skin crawl, but Gideon's tone chilled her deeper. Someone worse. Someone, even Draven, would send in his stead. Lightning flared outside, illuminating the tension between them. Helena swallowed hard. "So, what do you expect me to do? Run again? Disappear into another city until there's nowhere left to hide?" Gideon shook his head. "No. This time, you can't run. If you do, they'll find you faster. The only way out now is to face them." Her pulse thundered. Every instinct screamed to escape, but part of her, the part that had burned with defiance since the first betrayal, knew he was right. Running hadn't freed her. It had only postponed the inevitable. "And you?" she asked. "Are you here to fight with me, or against me?" The question hung heavy in the air. Gideon stepped closer, his face inches from hers, rain still clinging to his lashes. For a heartbeat, There was no storm, no enemy, no betrayal, just the unbearable gravity between them. "I've made too many mistakes with you," he whispered. "But this one, Helena, this one I won't let happen without me at your side." Her chest tightened, torn between trust and doubt, love and survival. She had no time to untangle them, because at that very moment, the sound of tires screeching outside cut through the storm. Then came the unmistakable slam of car doors, heavy footsteps splashing through puddles. They were already here. Helena's blood ran cold. The footsteps outside multiplied, heavy and purposeful, crunching against the wet pavement. Shadows flickered past Helena's window, tall figures slicing through the storm with a precision that screamed trained. Gideon moved instantly, pulling the curtains shut and lowering his voice. "They've tracked you faster than I thought. We don't have long." Helena's chest tightened. Her apartment suddenly felt like a coffin. No escape, no way to vanish without being seen. "How many?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "3 cars. At least 6 men." Gideon's hand brushed against the gun holstered beneath his coat. His movements were steady, practiced. "They aren't here to negotiate." The sharp knock on the door made Helena jump. Not a polite knock, an authoritative one. One that carried a promise. "Helena Graves," a man's voice called, deep and smooth, almost cordial. "We know you're inside. We won't ask twice." Her blood froze. Whoever this was, he knew her name. She shot Gideon a panicked look. He raised a hand, steady, signaling her to stay quiet. Then he leaned close, whispering, "Back room. Now." Helena's body obeyed before her mind could catch up. She moved down the narrow hallway, her bare feet silent on the wooden floor, her heart slamming against her ribs. The back room was small, cluttered with books and boxes, but Gideon had already thought ahead. He shoved aside an old shelf to reveal a narrow service door that led into the alley. "Go," he urged, his eyes burning into hers. "I'll hold them." "No," she whispered fiercely, grabbing his wrist. "Not this time. I'm not leaving you to bleed in my place." The door rattled as the first hard kick landed against it. Wood splintered. "You don't have a choice," Gideon said, his voice urgent now. "They're here for you, Helena. Not me. If you stay, they'll take you alive. And trust me, that's worse than death." The door cracked, a second kick sending shards flying across the floor. Helena's breath came sharp and fast. Every instinct screamed to run, but the part of her that had chosen to fight, the part that still carried the flash drive hidden away, refused to let Gideon face this alone. Her eyes locked on his. Rainwater still clung to his face, his jaw set like stone. In that moment, she didn't see the betrayals, the mistakes, the shadows between them. She only saw the man who had come back when he didn't have to. "I'm not leaving you," she said, steel lacing her voice. The door finally gave way with a deafening crack. Figures in black surged into the apartment, armed and merciless. And Helena Graves stepped out of the shadows, ready to fight. The first intruder crossed the threshold, his boots crunching over splintered wood. His weapon rose, a black silhouette against the storm's flash. Helena didn't hesitate. She swung the heavy lamp from the table beside her, glass shattering across his face as he crumpled with a grunt. Another man lunged in behind him, only to meet Gideon's fist, the crack of bone loud over the thunder. The apartment erupted into chaos. Shadows clashed with shadows, rain-laced air thick with gunpowder and fury. Helena ducked low as bullets ripped into the walls, splinters stinging her skin. She grabbed a fallen pistol, the cold steel foreign but necessary in her hand. "Helena!" Gideon barked, firing down the hall. The alley moved, but she didn't move. She fired instead, one shot, then another, dropping the man who had aimed for Gideon's back. The recoil jolted her shoulder, but her focus didn't waver. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was defiance. Together, they pushed toward the service door, Gideon clearing the path with brutal efficiency. But as they reached the narrow threshold, a figure blocked their escape. He wasn't like the others. His presence filled the room, his voice calm as the storm shrieked outside. "Helena Graves," he said, almost softly, as if savoring her name. "You've made this entertaining." She knew instantly. This was the one Gideon had warned her about. The shadow-driven scent. Worse. Colder. The kind of man who didn't leave loose ends. "Go," Gideon whispered, raising his gun. "No," Helena shot back, her voice shaking but unyielding. "Not without you." The man smiled faintly, a predator enjoying the inevitability of the hunt. "Only one of you walks out of here." Time froze. Lightning flashed, thunder splitting the sky as Helena made her choice. She stepped forward, placing herself between Gideon and the assassin's gaze. "You want me?" she said, her voice steady despite the terror clawing her chest. "Then you'll have to take me alive." The man's eyes flickered, just enough of a distraction. Gideon moved faster than he thought. A shot rang out, deafening in the small space. The assassin staggered, surprise flickering across his face before he collapsed, silent, into the pooling rainwater that leaked through the broken door. For a moment, neither Helena nor Gideon moved. Their breathing was ragged, the storm roaring around them. Then Gideon lowered his gun, his shoulders slumping. "It's over," he said. But even as he spoke, Helena knew it wasn't. She looked down at the fallen man, then at Gideon. "No," she whispered. "It's only the beginning. They'll send more. They'll never stop." Gideon met her gaze, something unspoken passing between them. Fear. Loyalty. Love. A bond forged not in safety, but in fire. And yet, in the middle of that storm, Helena Graves felt something new, a strength she hadn't known she carried. She wasn't just running anymore. She wasn't just surviving. She was choosing. She slipped her hand into Gideon's, their fingers tightening together. "Then we fight," she said. Outside, the storm raged, but Helena no longer feared it. She had become the storm. And whatever came next, the world would remember her name.